So, hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Now in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make a gas bottle burner. There is said gas bottle. Now this is not a 13 kilo, it's not slightly different, and it's a 17.8 kilogram. And I'm going to make it as the layout suggests, which I'll show you a bit in a minute. In order to get the valve off, which is, you know, the bit with the tap, usually if you cut the handle bit off, if you don't want that, so this bit, then you could smack it with a hammer, which I don't want that bit, so I could have done that. You can try an adjustable spanner around there, but that also didn't work with us. What ended up working was a massive 24-inch adjustable spanner from the neighbour. We put it around there. I got this bit of 6mm steel bar and I put it between the handle to stop the bottle spinning, and then my dad was holding the bottle upright because he kept wanting to fall over. I was holding it from twisting, and then the neighbour with his massive spanner undid it. Now the neighbour knows a lot about things like this, and it's a tapered thread, and they have thread lock on. So apparently if you get a small little blowtorch, not a crazy one, you can just heat it up a bit so like it starts to get hot. He said to 200 degrees, hard to gauge what 200 degrees is, but basically you heat it up to about 200 degrees and that will melt the thread lock, and then it will be much easier to undo. So there's many different ways of doing that, so it's up to you how you really get this off, but basically experiment and in order to get this out. Now once you've done that, I'm sure you've watched a few of these videos already if you're anything like anyone else, and what you do is you fill it with water and then you empty it, and then fill it with water again and then empty it, and then fill it with water again and then empty it, and it's good to leave it upside down for like at least a day, which I haven't done. But what I'm going to do is stick the hose in it whilst I'm grinding the top off. Now I still need to do that bit, which is measure. So I've started measuring on here. What I'm going to do is just measure to the bottom of the curve where it starts to taper up, and I'm going to cut all the way around. I'm going to mark it with a bit of tape like I've already done for the door. Okay, so I've got a new battery in here now, so I'm now going to film cutting this. Now I watched a video and got a little trick, which also is a trick I got from a neighbour when doing woodworking and applying hinges, which is I'm going to cut all the edges, but I'm going to leave a bit of metal stuck in all four corners. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld the hinges on and then cut the rest of the corners out, and that way everything will be perfectly aligned. But what I'm also going to do, I'm going to have the hinge welded to the bottle and bolted to the door, so if for whatever reason I might want to detach the door at a later date, I do want to add a window in here, so to be able to remove the door. It's just a feature that you have on purchase burners as well. You can take the doors off. And the reason there is a bottom door is because I'm going to make it a multi-fuel stove, and I want to be able to empty the ash when the burner's on. It's just something, again, I'm very familiar with my dad's burner in the boat, which is a Morso Squirrel, an excellent burner, and the key to a good burner is sealed. And the reason I like a bottom door is if you've had your burner going all night, and there's some embers in the bottom, to get it going, it's really useful just to be able to open the bottom door and get maximum airflow, and it'll just get that fire raging. So it's a good little feature, and it's not something everyone wants, but it's quite dangerous as well, because what they come is safety features, so you can't open the bottom door without the top door being open, because you can get it that raging that it can just melt the whole thing. So it's something I'd only recommend doing to people who know what they're doing with burners and have had burners in the past. Okay, so what do you do after you've cut your hole? and nut your corners. Gas bottles, apparently, according to my neighbour who knows a lot about metalwork, he owns the boatyard. He says these are galvanised. What happens is you don't want to weld galvanised, because when hot dip galv melts, it releases some toxic chemical, who, like cyanide, I think he said, or something like that. But basically, you want to grind it all back. He said 2 inches away. Now that's probably only about 1.5 inches. But you want to get really rid of it, and you want to grind it, and then put a fresh grinding disc on and grind it again. And that is what you want your hinges to look like. Eventually I'll do the seam welds. Now the door was cut out and swinging. To make something for the door to shut against, I used some 20mm wide strips that I cut out of some 3mm steel and welded it around the opening. I also put fire rope around the door to seal it. To make the grate at the bottom, I've used some 25mm squared mesh, which I had lying around, but it would have been better off as around 10mm squared. I traced the mesh around the top of the burner and then cut it out with the grinder and welded it in above the bottom door. I then cut another circle out, but this time leaving one wire longer, which I bent at 90 degrees and placed on top of the welded one, leaving the wire poking through the bottom door. This works really well as a griddle for loosening the ash. To make the handles, I purchased 2 welding hammers with spring handles off eBay. I measured 70mm from the bottom of each spring and then cut it and welded an M10 nut to the end. I welded an M10 bolt through the doors, then wound the handle onto the bolt, and I then cut a strip of metal and cut some notches for the catch. To make the vents, I cut holes in the doors, but leaving a strip of metal within the centre to weld a nut to. I used some scaffold bar and shaped it to the contours of the burner and welded it around the hole. I then cut 2 discs of 3mm steel with a hole saw and welded a bolt through the centre and then threaded it into the nuts on the doors. I wanted a baffle in this burner to try and keep the heat in, as well as 1 fire brick to try and store heat. So I made the baffle out of the fire brick by welding 3 pieces of metal at an angle towards the back top of the burner, which I then could lay the fire brick onto. For the top of the burner, I marked the centre of a 40 by 40 cm square sheet of 3mm steel. I drilled a hole within the centre and then used a screw with some rope and a pencil to draw a perfect circle. I then welded this to the top of the burner whilst it was upside down. For the flue, I used a 102mm hole saw and drilled it towards the back of the burner top, and then welded a bit of the flue around the hole. And lastly, I painted the whole burner black in burner paint, and that's it. I now have a fully functioning multi-fuel stove. The whole project in total cost £135, of which £75 was the flue and cowl, so the burner itself only cost £60 to make. I'm really happy with how this burner's come out, and there are some improvements I can make after using it, but for the most part it does run and it keeps me warm. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do hit that like button, drop a comment down below, and if you're not subscribed, I'd really appreciate it. So I'll see you guys in the next video. So here's a few clips of it just crackling away.